We're on to the next session now. So we have Mark Wenman. Mark Wenman works for Network, and Network are and Edialux products ranges within the company of Palsys. So there's a few bits going on there. But yeah, Mark Wenman will be doing a talk today about Avishock and the opportunities and technical application of it, Mark. So hopefully I introduced that okay. If I didn't, just correct me and let us know about yourself, okay?
Thank you, Natalie. Nice to meet you all. I've just had my break. Hopefully I don't have any crumbs on my mouth. I was kind of thinking about what to talk about, and I know that the business environment has been quite hard recently. So my thoughts were, obviously, I'm a bird specialist. I wanted to cover something that would possibly give you some opportunities for business you've never thought about and give you a bit of an extra edge over the competition when you go and look at jobs. So even if you don't do bird, you hopefully see some things here. You go, yeah, I can go out and maybe approach my general pest control customers about that. I'm going to just run a little bit of a presentation to show you a couple of things, and then I'm going to jump back in because I'm a very touchy-feely person, so I wanted to show you some products. If there is anything you kind of like here, my role is basically supporting yourselves on any bird jobs, so please get in contact direct or through the BPCA. And if you want to learn more about the products, then either do it one-on-one on site or also run courses as well. So again, get back in contact. You can have me for the whole day. I don't know if that's good or bad. So let me share. And I'll basically take you through a couple of things first. Hopefully you can all see that. So Network, I've been around for a long time. I just do bird. My background is pest control, general pest control. And you probably know at least the products, if not the name or maybe me, through the actual products themselves. So we've got Avipoint, and you might even be able to see some Avipoint over the top of my head. And I believe how I'm sitting, you might even be able to see a daddy long legs directly above me. We have Birdwire. You're probably well aware of that aesthetic system. We have the Avishock, which I'm going to talk about. Obviously, we manufacture nets and fixings. And also we supply other products like daddy long legs, razor net, and stanchions. So like I said, why Avishock? I just feel that this system has a lot of unique points for yourselves when you go and see your customers, maybe things you've not tapped into before. I'll show you the system. When I'm doing it, hopefully I won't kind of touch the Energizer. If you see me go, ooh, you know, I've touched the Energizer. So it's a professional product, and we don't obviously supply it to end users, never. Well, Avishock, if you know your birds, and I love some of the things that Dave did, I will not attempt a goal call. That could be embarrassing. Although if you come on the course, I might do it. But it is effective on all bird species. And you probably know that some of these bird species, they're only dissuaded by, for example, pigeons, bird spikes, or Avishock. But Birdwire doesn't work so well in certain bird pressure levels. And the smaller the bird, like a sparrow, is only really dissuaded by bird netting. Avishock works on all, so I kind of feel that's a bit of a USP when you're looking at bird problems. Some sites might have all bird species. The key one, it looks cute. It's aesthetic and discreet, so I kind of jump out of the presentation and show you some tracks so you can see it. I think that's the key thing if you're looking for a customer. I'll show you a couple of pictures, hopefully I'll get time, on entrance canopies and stuff onto offices where I'm sure you'll go into regularly. It's flexible, so it goes on most surfaces. It's durable. I mean, it's obvious if you're selling a system. Birdwork in particular, we know that the Avipoint spikes will be good for 10 years. I've installed some stuff that somehow is still up after 20 years. So yeah, you want a system that obviously lasts and you value for money. It's electric, so that's obvious. I'll show you a couple of things about that, but it's actually cost effective to run. I think that can be a barrier, can't it? If some people are considering, oh, how much is it going to cost to run electricity? And it's easy to install. I think that's the key thing. I think sometimes people shy away from bird because they think, oh, it'd be quite difficult to install. I want to kind of reassure you that me, with 2 left hands and 2 left feet, I can install it easily. So yeah, have no reservations about considering this. I'll kind of show you this and I'll jump back out. This is kind of one of the systems that architects quite like. If you know anything about birds, architects tend to default to bird wire, sprung wire. This kind of takes it a stage further in being aesthetic. So if you ever do get involved with architects and they demand a certain system, this could be the time to insinuate in Avishock as an alternative. It's pretty quick to install. I'll give you a quick idea on that. And it's been installed in some key sites. I'll give you a couple of flavors of that as well so you can see. I'm just going to hopefully stop sharing. Be shocked when I come back onto the big screen. Just want to kind of show you the actual track, because you're probably saying, what is it? Essentially, that's a track. Comes in 2 flavors, 2 colors, black, and you've also got the stone. We used to do a brick red, but to be honest, because you don't really see it on the surface, you can see the aesthetics. It doesn't really matter, to be quite blunt, what the color is. Most people tend to go for color darker than the substrate, hence the reason for black. And then we have the connectors, which quite simply snap on. These are the way that you jump between tracks. So I won't try and do it here and now without something to press on. These are very sharp, which do pierce through the track. And you might see a bit of Mark's blood. But they do connect, snap on straight on top. That allows you to take the wire that I'll show you onto the power source. I mentioned about the flexibility. The track is quite pliable. So obviously compared to bird spikes and other things where bird spikes are quite rigid, you could, in theory, if you wanted to basically do a statue or over the top, you could actually install it over the top like so. And these are installed with the glue. You can see one of the network glues, Avishock or Avishock, it doesn't matter. There's also an opportunity if you want to, which I'll show you a couple of pickies, has been done before. You can actually screw through as well. So a very flat-headed screw that goes into the substrate. You might want to remove it. That's been done occasionally so people can paint the substrate. So that's the idea. So you've kind of seen the track. The thing one I can say about the system, it's powered by a power source. The key one is an energizer. So the energizer is very similar. They were saying about farming, etc., and foxes. If you've ever seen an electric fence that goes on a farm, the energizer is very similar. The only difference is we limit it to 5 kilovolts. So the power is lower. So there's no risk of it harming birds, and that's been proven. There's lots of research. We have all the scientific data from central science laboratories to prove that. The energizer, 2 ring terminals, you connect on the lead wire, which is the power source. The lead wire can be indefinite length. Most people limited to 20 meters with this plugged inside. And then 2 ring terminals connect onto the track. So we've got the track here, like so. The 2 terminals, I'll put that down. I'm not going to plug it in yet. So the 2 ring terminals connect onto there and there, like so. So that would be live if it's powered in. So you can actually make this a bit more aesthetic, so it's really flat. And then the idea being, when this is plugged in, the energizer pulses every 1.3 seconds. When the bird lands on the track, and the bird would have to put a foot across. I should have manicured my nails before, shouldn't I? Put a foot across both, like a gull or a small bird would step across. And when it makes a connection, the energizer pulses every 1.3 seconds. Doesn't harm the bird. The bird thinks that's unusual. I've not experienced that before. Gulls will tend to lift up a foot briefly before flying off. Starlings, sparrows, pigeons will fly back off. And that modifies their behavior, and that's a key difference between this and bird spikes and bird wire, which are a barrier. This slightly changes their behavior. So it doesn't harm them. They go, don't like that. It's a bit like when we touch a filing cabinet in summer, we get that little electric discharge. We kind of go, not really sure about that. So they tend to avoid an area, and that's a key point of the track, but also a slightly bigger area as well. Starlings can even avoid a whole building, or even have known it. I mean, even it's a whole shopping centre because of the feeling they've got for that, and they avoid it. So quite interesting. The power source obviously plugs into the mains, and I will now dabble by plugging it in live, and I will keep my hands away. So let me plug this in. And that's a jack lead. Very hard to show you, isn't it? Like that, and that basically shows it's on. So it's a flashing light, like so. I will unplug that before I touch it. Obviously, when it's live, there's a risk of humans touching it. So we always say, whatever job you're looking at, ensure there's no risk, no vicarious liability risk of any third parties touching it when it's on. So shop front, when it's only 2.5 meters above, there's a risk that somebody might just kind of jump up and touch it. Absolutely not. Entrance to a school, don't. So anywhere that you know there could be a risk, that maybe you could put bird wire and there's no risk, don't put this on here. There is an obligation under the HSC. I had just some discussions about 15 years ago that you have to put warning signs there. That's part of the due diligence. So the due diligence is you tell your customer it's there, you show them where it is, you show them how to turn it off. If you need to do maintenance, you put it into the plan works, the permit to works if it's a really posh site that requires that. And you need to have these warning signs. And once said abroad, you need to have it in the right language. So but obviously it doesn't matter. So these go over maximum 5 meters, normally front facing. They can be a bit more discreet as they have other mitigating measures in place. But yeah, these are not a problem. Just have that there in due diligence. Here maybe I'll just raise my screen up and you can just about see there at the top. I won't get it down because it's quite big. There's a solar energizer up there and it's quite a nice day in Yorkshire, blue sky, but the solar gain, as you know, is quite low compared to summer. But this solar energizer was tested originally north of Aberdeen for a number of years and it works really well. It plugs in the same way. Obviously it's freestanding. You can kind of bolt it down so nobody takes it off and uses it on the caravan. But that solar energizer does need a recharge at least once a year, because obviously it's got a lithium cell battery in there, which can be depleted. And even in the beautiful blue sky in February, yeah, it wouldn't be recharged enough. And as we know, birds tend to come into an area when the weather's normally inclement this time of year. To come in. So that's kind of the overview as such. I'll show you some slides so you can get the idea of where it can be sold into as an opportunity for your customer. The back of the track is kind of slightly ribbed, almost a way of keying in the glue. So what you would do is you would apply the glue in the same way you would apply it for happy point spikes or bird wire bases or anything else, and that goes straight down. The good thing is there's no risk of it kind of oscillating off, which sometimes you get with bird spikes, sits flat to the substrate. You can walk on it, I wouldn't advocate it, but should you have a window cleaner that turns the system off, you can in theory walk on it. And these connectors are only used, as mentioned, to jump between tracks. So to cover off one little thing, you don't have to be an electrician to install it. It's portable electric, so in the same way it's very similar to installing a fly control unit like you used to install back in the day. You don't have to be competent, and competency can be from me or from others train you in how to use the system. It's very simple, really, really simple. I can't tell you how easy it is compared to something like bird wire. So, what I do now, I kind of show you a few pickies so you get an idea, because otherwise you're saying, that's a nice system, where do I put it? So I'll show you a couple of pictures so you get an idea on that. So hopefully I will share my screen again and do the right one. Hope that's come up. I would say to say yes, but I take it that it has come up. Is that moving? Was that not moving? There we go. I've already showed you these bits, the kind of how the bird steps across. This is a real advantage because, if you're proofing off an area like some ledges on a building or a roof, you have to physically cover the whole area if the birds will go onto every part of it. So you cover a whole edge with spikes, doesn't look very pretty and it restricts movement. With the Avishock, you normally put a row on the leading edge, sometimes a row in the middle of the ledge if the pressure is really high. So it's actually a minimal amount of track compared to the area. And it works on the premise the bird will have a little walk around, touch it eventually, and remember the track is on there. So that's kind of an advantage when it comes to materials. I won't go into the techie bits in detail because I haven't got time, but essentially it's been designed to go outside. It's UV stable. It's not flammable. It's been designed that way, so there's no risk of it ever catching fire. The 2 copper strips are impregnated in as an extrusion. So it's durable, and it's been designed for the water to mitigate off. The only thing I would say, if you know the water's going to pool on a substrate, then you would put little tubes that we have just to lift it up slightly to allow the water to mitigate out. And sometimes even, this is an interesting thing on bird behavior, I've actually installed it onto like a PVC section or something similar to really lift it up. As you know, with bird behavior, the higher the area, the more interested is the bird to land on it. Birds tend to land on ridge tiles first, normally to look around before they get established on the building. So by lifting it up slightly, it's actually encouraging the bird to land onto the track. But really what you're doing is obviously getting it out of the water, if that kind of makes sense. I've already shown you all the bits, the components. That's not a problem. The tools, I should have shown it whilst I was doing it, but I've only got 2 hands. If you can see me on the little screen, we have obviously shears for cutting a track, dead simple. We have the crimper and the wire strippers for putting on the little connectors, really, really simple to do. And the key tool, if you can just about see me here, is the voltmeter. So the voltmeter measures pulse. As I mentioned, it pulses every 1.3 seconds. You can't use a normal multimeter because it will blow it. And also it doesn't measure pulse. So this is one you'd normally use on an electric fence. And this goes on to the 2 terminals to measure the pulse. You get a reading, the optimum reading is 5 kilovolts. We've limited it at 5 kilovolts, so to minimize any risk of it shorting. A normal electric fence is about 9. And you can install hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters of track, probably up to about 400 meters of track, sometimes even 800 on one energizer. So that's not really a limiting factor when it comes to doing the job. Normally you use one energizer for the whole of the job. So fairly simple tools. This is a nice picture. This is really old, this one, but it kind of shows sometimes you get various birds on the same building, even on the same ledge, and it happens quite often. Coastal town centres. You've got pigeons, you've got a gull species, you might even have starlings. Bird spikes will only work on one species. With the Avishock, it works on all. So I quite like this as an opportunity in a town centre for all pressures and all birds. This kind of brings it home. I mean, it's good to have an introduction first, but these three pictures here I love. The one of Tesco, a reasonably old picture. But you can imagine that front facing, if you've got bird spikes on or even netting, it would work, but it wouldn't look very nice. So I think the Avishock is an alternative for some of your customers against bird spikes or even against doing nothing. The Wilkinson one, that's an interesting box sign. It could be a ledge, it could be something else. One stripper track is all you need. And on the right-hand side, this was a shopping centre in Lancashire that was proofed with a single row and a lot of the sign. That's all you need for birds, as you know. Single row track, just dissuade them from the leading edge. And remember, if the birds touch that because they're looking for the leading edge to foul on people below or because of food, it may well dissuade them from the whole of that facade because they remember the touch of the track and the flock goes kind of visible. I like this on window ledges. Obviously, window ledges, please ensure that either those windows cannot be opened, they're restricted, or there's no other means of access, or the ledge is so deep that nobody can touch it. Please be aware of that, but it's a great system for going ledges and tops of walls. That one you can see on the right-hand side is a great one there. The kind of parapets, normally they're proofed to stop the birds kind of moving down onto lower ledges. Again, a great one there with a single row track, and that was powered by a solar energizer. And one of the best pictures I love is this one on the right-hand side, which was a sort of bar restaurant where they've installed the track on top of the sign. You can't see it. It looks perfect. You see the jumper connectors I showed you linking between the tracks. And just above, forgive me that you can't see it on there, but you've got the bird spikes on there. And as you know, I think every point looks beautiful. It should be everywhere, but the comparison between the two systems kind of brings it home. A few other jobs, I kind of quite like showing these. Some of you might have seen them before, but are pretty boring. On the top left, an office, part of a factory, where single row, weirdly the ledge was degrading, so they needed something as well that would actually keep the ledge together, and bird spikes wouldn't work, but they have various species, sparrows and starlings. Bottom left, that's sea facing. It doesn't matter if it's sea facing as long as it rains regularly. That will basically wash off the salt accumulation, so that's no issue, and that was fine on that one. There they actually screwed it down because they wanted to clean and paint the facade regularly, so you can't screw it down. Bottom right, great example against gulls. Somebody built a restaurant on the sea with pebbles and wondered why they had gulls. So a net would be horrible because it was a very expensive restaurant, so they put 3 rows of Avishock track and it was perfect. So it works against gulls, the large gulls, large stars, dentatus, etc., and pigeons as well. So that was a good solution. Maintenance, I advocate going there at least once a year to check the voltage, just to check the connectors, just to make sure everything's okay. It's not obligatory under the warranty, but I think it's good practice. And I love the top right. This was actually a protected species, but remember, the Avishock doesn't harm the birds, so it dissuaded the bird from an architect's head office on that lovely facade. This one I kind of think was kind of a good opportunity for different types of business. Normally, Avishock's kind of similar to spikes and bird whites, limited space areas, so ledges, edges, ridges, and places like that. But this was a large open roof with a very bad storm coming towards me as I took the photo. I got off quick. But here the track was actually put in between the roof purlings at a space of approximately 30 centimetres apart. Normally, we wouldn't advise that just because it's not normally appropriate for big open spaces, but here it's absolutely perfect along the sort of 40-metre long roof with a track that far apart. People can still walk on it, people can still work, and it dissuaded the gulls and the pigeons that were trying to get established on the roof. If you try to net that, interesting to do the curve, and also the winds were brutal, so I think they would be under a lot of pressure, the system there, so it was great for that. So small open roofs, if you've got a small dorm or somewhere else, the track on there could be perfect at 5x5 with the track spaced. Good for gulls. I was actually going to do a presentation on cold legislation, but I thought maybe not. This is another example here about pitched roofs. The top left one I love. Maybe the warning signs, maybe there's a few too many, but it doesn't really matter. But you can see there the track is going across. And the tracks are at 1 meter centers. So you've got a track 1 meter apart, linked by a jumper connector each time, down to an energizer, either in the room below, or you could have a solar if you can find somewhere to put it. But the top left had, oh my gosh, there was no standing room. The amount of pigeons are on there because the sea was the other side. Probably clearer example, top right of a roof. The birds were just perching on the very top. Housing association building, observing food, etc. And that dissuaded them off. What else could you do? Net it, maybe try with gel, falconry, but this, 4 rows of track dissuaded the birds. Bottom left, another example, top of a dormer. The tracks on there dissuaded the birds with a row along the ridge. It's really kind of thinking about where the birds are, observing where they are and put the track where the birds are. And bottom right, the building in Merseyside where the gulls were loafing, and a couple of rows on the mansard, a couple of rows on the top of the parapet dissuaded them. So that was eventually netted because there were so many gulls coming in, but they kept the birds off the top edges for a while. Kind of my favourite photo, if you have a favourite photo, I love this on glass atriums. It doesn't have to be shopping centres like you can see on the photos there. It could be front entrance to the office I'm in at the moment, a house, anywhere else. The idea being, as I mentioned, that birds love landing on heights points first. So here the track, you can just about see it on the bottom, on the left-hand side photo. A row was put on the top of the atrium, that's a long point. And then on the little raised sections, a row of track was put around the outside. And a couple of extra rows every so often going left to right. And that dissuaded the pigeons and gulls. Really simple, but worked on the premise that the gulls were landing on the glass to get warm, came onto the higher points, touched Avishock, went, that's interesting, flew off somewhere else. And then you chase the bird, don't you? You follow other places for leads. Nearly done, Natalie. 2 more. Brise Soleil glass facades, these little weird affectations on the fronts of buildings now rather than net curtains. Actually, Dave was saying about bum bags. I love net curtains rather than Brise Soleil. But a row of track on these. You don't see it. There was silly numbers of pigeons and starlings on this because it was sea facing, and dissuaded them off. Worked really well, and this was sea facing. And I kind of mentioned solar. If you have got, and you go to a lot of sites, sometimes there's no power. Don't let it be a barrier. There is a solar energizer, works very, very well. Just able to recharge it. A couple of examples there. Bottom left and bottom right that still need to be wired in. There's an example of a IP65 enclosure, top left, top right, so you can actually put the normal mains enclosure in. But either way, the energy, if you ever come to this, the energizer needs to be easily accessible, so you can turn it off if somebody needs to do some work around it. But not so tricky, you can never find it. I had a job I went to along with a pest controller once. It was in a hotel. They wanted to put it in the ceiling of a bedroom, which I thought would be quite interesting to get into. So yeah, don't do that. Oh, is that my alarm to say dismiss? Final one. I started a bit late, Natalie. The final one is running costs. Obviously the system has materials cost. You have your labour cost. It's quick to install, sometimes as quick as bird spikes. The actual running cost is really low. So the energizer is only on, in theory, on, that's right, when the bird lands on the track. The rest of the time, the energizer is charged and discharged the capacitor. So a couple of pounds to run it per energizer. So most jobs normally require one energizer. Don't forget, it's an aesthetic system that needs to be kept clean so the birds can land on it. So it might need an annual clean. I've known jobs been there 15 years. They're a bit dirty from the smog of London, but otherwise okay. So yeah, that's forgive me for the zoom through. I hope some of it made sense, but I kind of thought, there's definitely some opportunities there for this system and these hard times where if you don't do bird work, you might consider it. If you already do bird work, think, maybe that could be a system I could go to my customers with. Yeah.
Time flies, doesn't it, Mark, when it goes so quickly. I'm guessing everyone can come and have a chat to you about it a bit more if they want to know some more about Avishock.
Yeah, always. It's my job to talk to people about birds, as you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do have lots of conversations about birds, like you mentioned about gulls. It's a big topic at the minute, isn't it? So I've got a few questions. We're a bit over time, but I think at the end we can make some up. So a couple of questions just before we move on. Is someone asked about snow? Is it okay with Avishock? Okay with snowfall?
Yeah, good point. It's been snowing here. It doesn't harm the system per se. Small amounts of snow over the top would dissuade the birds from landing through it. it wouldn't cause damage to the track. I just advocate turning it off possibly, and then when the slow is gone, turn it back on again. But even in Sweden, there's quite a lot bought there. Bird spikes get pulled off by snow. When it regresses, the system's fine. So, yeah.
Of course, absolutely. And Stephen here asks, how much meterage does an engineer cover an energizer cover before you need a second one?
Thank you. That's a good question. The trackers, and forgive me for not saying it, has copper within, so it's got a very low electrical resistance. So if you kind of look down the track, you probably won't be able to see the copper. I might have stripped it out. So the red-faced energizer is the lower jaw one. That can cover about 400 meters, give or take. The only sort of, I suppose, mitigating factor is the number of connectors, because they're stainless steel. Do you remember that Breeze Soleil that had lots of tracks? This energizer would be able to power less track, but still about 300. The white-faced one, which I didn't show you, same, but white, double jaw rating, that can cover 600, 700 meters of track for energizer. So yeah, quite a lot. I mean, some jobs have required quite a few energizers. And another little thing I'd say is if you're kind of doing one area over there, make sure that's a separate energizer. Doing one over there, make sure that's a separate energizer, just so that people are not tempted not to turn it off. We don't want to work it on the track without being.
Absolutely. And can anyone fit Avishock, or do you need like an electrical background? Peter's asking.
Thank you, Peter. You don't need to be electrically trained, as in being an electrician, but you do need to be competent. So competency comes from training by us or Edialux or whomever. Yeah, we'll come out and give you the training. Be a glamorous assistant on the job.
Absolutely.
So, you do need to be competent. It's kind of obvious, but with this, because electrical, if you get it wrong, then it's not going to be a risk, but it won't work. Because obviously, if you do like I did with the connector and it's kind of not on quite correctly, with a certain technique, that comes off at the beginning of the track, the whole track will be dead.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, kind of related to that question as well. Someone's asking here: do you have a risk assessment for the use of this device, like an example, or do you recommend doing one?
Yeah, very much so. There's a method statement. There is a risk assessment that can go into your RAM. So very much so. It's kind of more key on this than probably other systems. I mean, a good example is petrol stations. You obviously wouldn't put it on a petrol station. Entrance to a school. Those sort of risk assessments. When it's the initial survey as well, the risk assessment will be, the system has to be fully off, has to be easy to turn on, etc. So if anybody wants it,
Great. Nick's asking here, can you use this on a asphalt roof? If so, how would you fix it and keep it watertight?
Asphalt roofs, how I love them. Yes.
I thought it was a good one for you.
Everyone on my flat in London, it always leaked. I always get reminded of that by my wife. Asphalt's really, really tricky. I mean, glues to actually bond to it, irrespective of the system. Avishock's better because it's a kind of a continuous length, so it has its own innate weight. My advice on asphalt would be to try and find a way of putting something on the asphalt, I don't know, a block or something else, every so often, and then a track then be via those connectors screwed to the block that's on there. So you're not actually bonding to the asphalt. It's gritty, expands and contracts, it pops off most glues, no matter what you do. Even the best glues are designed for it. You don't want it kind of hanging off. So yeah, I try and go for a weight every couple of meters on that, and then the track is then attached on. It's a good question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Great. Well, listen, we've got a few left, but we'll do the same with you if you don't mind. We'll put these questions over to you for you to answer them. Wanted to get a few of them in there. There's a bit of a theme, but yeah, thank you so much, Mark. That was great.
Nice meeting you. Cheers.
All right, take care.